Unlike the orchestration tools we've already covered in this module, Ansible is an agentless tool. So, in other words, no software needs to be installed on the client machines in order for management to take place. As you can probably guess, this means Ansible uses the push model of configuration management. The Ansible architecture is pretty straightforward. We have an Ansible management node where everything takes place. This is where configuration happens and is also where configurations are pushed out to connected nodes. In addition to this simplistic architecture, it uses a very simple programming language called YAML, and YAML stands for YAML Ain't Markup Language. And yes, I'm 100% serious about that. That is exactly what it stands for. The management node is referred to as the controller machine, and this is the machine where Ansible is installed. This is the only piece needed in the deployment, so you can see that this is a much easier model to deploy as compared to those agent-based models that we've looked at. The controller machine communicates via SSH as its most common method, but it also has the capability of using Windows Remote Management and a few other methods based on what the client needs. Of course, there are some terms we want to know with Ansible and those components that we need to define, starting with the Ansible inventory file. The inventory file is a list of nodes that are under the management of the Ansible system, such as servers or switches. Using the YAML language that we mentioned previously, we can write code to define tasks for execution. These configuration codes are referred to as playbooks and are essentially like to-do lists. They are sets of instructions for the hosts to take. Playbooks can also be used to retrieve information from the hosts about their current state. Here's a look at a YAML-based playbook, and I think you can see right away that this is a bit easier to interpret than maybe Python or Ruby. It's a fairly simple language. This particular example would be used to install an Apache web server on multiple hosts. The controller machine has what's referred to as an automation engine, and the automation engine is what the users will access in order to create Ansible playbooks in the YAML language. Inside the automation engine, we have a few pieces that we want to define, which are the inventory, the API, the plugins, and the modules. The inventory is very simply a list of all the IP addresses which Ansible is actively managing. The modules are tasks which are invoked by the playbooks. In other words, the playbook defines which modules should be executed against the host in the inventory. These modules are pushed out to the managed clients to perform specific actions. Also, as far as the inventory goes, know that Ansible can manage both physical devices in your private enterprise network and also cloud platforms such as Azure, VMware, and Rackspace, just to name a few. That's what APIs in Ansible are used for. They transport data for cloud services, both public and private. The plugins you can think of very similar to how browser plugins work. These are pre-built pieces of code that can be executed to perform specific things against the inventory hosts. And again, the controller machine is in charge of organizing all of these pieces and organizing the playbook input from the users and pushing all of those desired configuration changes out to the managed hosts that are listed in the inventory. So you can see that Ansible has a few less moving pieces than the tools we've looked at previously, and also a very intuitive language. If you're leaning toward an agentless orchestration tool, Ansible is definitely worth checking out.